That's right. This is your anonymous tutor. We're covering the Iranian retaliation against Israel in their attack essentially on Iran and their proxies.
John, thank you. In Jerusalem to New York then, and Sarah Smith. Sarah, what has the US reaction been to this attack tonight?
Well, we heard from President Biden a few minutes ago, and he said that the attack had been ineffective and defeated, and that he had instructed the US military to assist in Israel's defense. And as we heard, US naval destroyers fired about a dozen interceptors at those Iranian missiles. President Biden and Vice President Harris watched all this happen from the Situation Room. And Mr. Biden also said, make no mistake, he is fully supportive of Israel's security. He said he hasn't spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu yet, but that he intends to, and they will discuss the consequences for Iran. And other officials here say it's just too early to start discussing what those consequences might be. But you can be sure that America is no longer going to be urging Israel to exercise any restraint in its response. They see this as an entirely different situation, what they're calling a brazen and unacceptable escalation of hostilities in the region from Iran in support of terror groups that it nurtures and supports in the region. So the emphasis here today, quite different actually from how it was yesterday, is very much on what America's calling its ironclad support for Israel's right to defend itself, although they won't say whether or not the US might actually be involved in any of that response and the consequences when that indeed comes.
Sarah, thank you. Well, fears are growing about the escalating crisis here in the Middle East. In the early hours of this morning, Israel's military said that its troops had crossed the border into southern Lebanon, and they told people living in more than 25 villages there to evacuate immediately. Well, today it was also revealed that Israeli special forces had operated inside Lebanon dozens of times over the last few months, destroying tunnels and dismantling weapons. Well, we're going to take you to both sides of the border tonight. In just a moment, we'll get the latest from our senior international correspondent, Orla Guerin, who is in the southern Lebanon city of Tyre. But first, our Middle East correspondent, Lucy Williamson, is on the border in northern Israel. Lucy.
Well, Anna, tonight, people here in northern Israel were still absorbing the news that Israel had launched that ground incursion into Lebanon across the border here. And today, we were told that Israeli special forces has spent more than 200 nights on the Lebanese side of the border, preparing the ground, finding and destroying Hezbollah targets there. The Iranian missile attack tonight, though, is a real reminder of how widespread, how unpredictable the risks of Israel's wars can be. In northern Israel, it was clear this attack was different. People well used to Hezbollah's rocket attacks, tonight glued to the sky, to their phones. Israel's air defenses tackling Iranian missiles, wave after wave.
Just atrocity after atrocity.
On the ground along this northern border, a new generation is fighting an old and stubborn war. A limited, targeted ground incursion into Lebanon, the army says, to destroy Hezbollah tunnels and allow Israel's northern residents to return home.
And
4 more reserve divisions were called up today.
Participation in it.
You can see the evidence of Israel's ground incursion here, a few miles from the border. Yesterday, there were dozens of tanks lined up in these fields. Now, almost the entire fighting force is gone, and several more armored vehicles are preparing to move.
The other political party.
A military official briefed journalists today that special forces had been operating just inside Lebanon for the past 11 months, destroying tunnels.
Third party or independent.
They showed us the weapons they'd found. With Hezbollah weakened, I asked a spokesman about the appetite to push the group further north.
We are acting with a plan to carry out operations in a limited, targeted way close by to the Israeli border between between Israel and Lebanon, making sure we remove these immediate threats.
I asked if that plan could change.
We have many plans on the table. At the moment, we are focusing on removing the immediate threats from close by to the Israeli border.
In border towns like Kiryat Shmona, emptied a year ago by fears of a Hamas-style attack, there's strong support for Israel's ground invasion.
I am certain that this ground maneuver will bring the residents back safely, and I think it is very, very needed, and that's the answer. That's exactly what we wanted, maybe a bit too late, but better late than never.
A day into Israel's invasion, its forces have so far met little resistance on the ground. But Hezbollah remains a powerful enemy, with an even more powerful backer. The risks of this incursion have not yet fully emerged, but in the years since the Hamas attacks, Israel's risk appetite has grown. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, on the Israel-Lebanon border.
Well, Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati has said today that the country is facing perhaps the most dangerous moment in its history. And around 1 million people here in Lebanon, around 20% of the population, have now been displaced from their homes. Well, our senior international correspondent, Orla Guerin, is in the city of Tyre in southern Lebanon, very close to the area where Israeli troops cross the border. Orla.
I mean, Israel
Anna,
is just
tonight in the
spreading out
past half an
aggression in
hour or
all
so, we've been
directions
able to
in the
see
whole area.
incoming Israeli strikes
It's not
a few miles from
surprising that
here,
Iran
visible
would try
from our
to
live
defend
position. And of
its
course,
friends
Israeli troops
in
are
that
on the
region.
ground. Now, they invaded by crossing the border, which is just about 12 miles from here. Israel is talking about a limited ground invasion, but that's no consolation to many Lebanese. They remember the devastation caused here in 2006, the last time Israel and Hezbollah went to war. And there are many in Lebanon, particularly here in the south, who fear that their country could become another Gaza. The empty road to Tyre. Few were heading to southern Lebanon today. Israel is ordering residents of 27 villages in the area to leave. Inside the city, in the old Christian quarter, some of the wreckage left by a recent Israeli strike, and danger here still. Well, within the last few moments, we've heard the sound of 2 explosions, and it sounds like there are still planes in the air. This site is where another airstrike happened over the weekend, bringing down several buildings here. We've been told that 9 people were killed here alone. Hezbollah brought us to this site to show us this damage. We met Sausan El Halawa without Hezbollah. She took us to her family home, which is no more. My daughter-in-law died here, she says. Her sons were injured. My husband was there and I was there. The room fell on top of us. There's nothing left. Sausan lists the names of her neighbours who died. We're just ordinary people here, she says. And then, this time, a sonic boom, an Israeli warplane breaking the sound barrier. Time to go. Many already have, getting away before it gets any worse. Well, you can see here there's been a massive strike. Cars have been flipped over on their sides. Trees have been ripped out of the ground. And just across on the other side of the road, there is a massive crater. Israel has been hitting this area hard, and now it has troops on the ground here in southern Lebanon. The last time that happened, in 2006, it was devastating for Tyre. This ancient city is usually a popular holiday resort. Now it's already a victim of war. But a wider war is being played out here tonight. Iranian missiles streaking towards Israel in the skies over Tyre. Across the region now, fires burning everywhere. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Southern Lebanon.
Well, the timing of that Iranian missile attack on Lebanon tonight is particularly notable, coming as it did hours after the news that Israel had launched that ground invasion into southern Lebanon. Iran also said that that was in response to the killing here in Beirut of the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, on Friday, and the killing again by Israel in Tehran of Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, just a few weeks ago. Well, let's return to our correspondent, John Donison, in Jerusalem. John, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has spoken tonight. He's called this a mistake. There's already talk about how and when Israel might respond.
Netanyahu, I mean, he's,
Yes, and if you think back to April when Iran launched 300 drones and rockets towards Israel in a much more telegraphed attack, actually, that caused minimal damage really here in Israel. Israel responded by bombing Iran. Now, this attack tonight was much more serious. I think Israelis are going to wake up tomorrow and there's probably considerably more damage than we've seen so far tonight. There's a possibility that some military bases were hit hard. In my report earlier, you saw a school took a direct hit. Also, restaurants, large craters in the road. So this is, as I said, really unprecedented. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Iran will pay. We don't know when Israel's response is going to come, but you're almost certain it will come.
Sorry to have kept you waiting. Looks like the stream is over anyway, so I'm just going to end the stream now.